Going on to chapter 2, the case study is about a tribe in Australia that is a native tribe of Aborigines, and they're protesting a uranium mine on their sacred lands. And so this chapter talks about the ethics and economics and choices that we confront as we use resources. There's not a whole lot to sticky note in this chapter, so we're going to go all the way to page 33. And make sure you know these guys, Emerson, Whitman, and Thoreau, and you did or will learn these in 11th grade English class. They're transcendentalist authors, and they were important parts of the burgeoning environmental movement, especially around the the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, which was our first wave of environmental protections, where we established national parks and we started protecting a lot of land. And so their work was very influential in that. Part of that wave of environmental protection involved John Muir. He lived at Yosemite National Park and he wrote a lot of books. He was considered a preservationist, which means don't harm the land at all. Preserve it at all costs. And he was a Sierra Club founder. So when you see the Sierra Club, John Muir was the founder of that. And here's a picture with Teddy Roosevelt and John Muir. And Teddy Roosevelt was a little different. Teddy Roosevelt really loved nature, but he loved to hunt and he loved to ride his horse, and he really loved to use nature, but you also you conserve it. So his philosophy is, let's use nature but make sure it comes back. So I'm going to hunt these animals but leave enough so they can repopulate. Let's cut down a tree but replant it so it will come back. And so Teddy Roosevelt was more of a conservationist, which means you use resources but in a sustainable manner. And John Muir was more of a preservationist, which means don't touch them, preserve them at all costs. And so they had a lot of discussions. They met for about 5 days in Yosemite National Park and hiked and camped around, and kind of weird to think of a president camping, just for 5 days. But back then they had more time, they could do that. And so they kind of hashed out the national park system at this time. Teddy Roosevelt also appointed a guy named Gifford Pinchot, who was the founder of the U.S. Forest Service. Now he was a conservationist, which means that he wanted to use the resources of the national forests, but in a sustainable manner. And so to this day, when you cut down trees, you have to replant them. It's the law. And you have to preserve watersheds and soil and things like that. And that's conservation. So use it, but in a sustainable manner. Another person that you need to know is named Aldo Leopold. And he was a philosopher. This is his picture. He wrote something called the Sand Almanac. And he was big on the ethics of preserving the environment. Alright, on page 37 we have something called environmental justice. And what that is the poor and minorities, ethnic minorities, tend to have more environmental problems than do white people and rich people. They're exposed to a greater share of pollution. More factories are in their neighborhoods. Landfills are put in their neighborhoods. Toxic dumps are put in their neighborhoods because they don't have the political power that middle class or wealthy white people have to oppose some of these things. And that's a form of environmental injustice. Page 38, we have here, in the 1960s is a really good example of environmental injustice. Uranium was mined near Navajo land in the American Southwest, and they employed a lot of Navajo Indians, and it killed a lot of them from cancer from uranium. Make sure you know the difference between subsistence versus capitalistic economies versus centrally planned. So subsistence is really your poor countries where basically people are growing food just for survival to eat and take care of their families. They don't really sell it. They don't really, get much money for to buy, TVs or carpet or whatever. That's just subsistence, barely having enough to survive. Capitalistic society is something that we think we are in America. We talk about capitalism a lot, but actually we're more of mixed. A centrally planned economy is more of your socialism or your communist. But we have actually a hybrid. The United States is a hybrid between capitalism and centrally planned. We have regulations that protect all people from misuse by corporations, insider trading, things like that. You can't just pollute wherever you want. There's a lot of laws that just protect all kinds of people. Also, we're mixed because we have a lot of public services. In a true capitalistic society, there would be no free public education. It would all be pay for education. We'd have no libraries. You'd have to buy all your books. We'd have no public roads. You'd have to pay a toll to go on your road. We would have no public services. In a true capitalistic society, you would have to pay for everything and the market would dictate. And so we don't have that. We have a hybrid society that helps all people. So it's between these two, socialism and capitalism. We have elements of socialism. Social security, welfare, those are all elements of socialism. Okay, page 39, we have the definition of an ecosystem service, which is a service provided by nature to help us survive and has monetary value. For example, trees make oxygen for us to breathe. Yes, they do. That's important. Does it have economic value? Yes, because without that oxygen, we would have difficulty, having survival, and we would have more hospitalization rates. But not just oxygen, but it purifies our air. So when we pollute the air through driving our cars or whatnot, the forests will purify the air, purifies the water, and then we don't have to spend money to purify the air or water ourselves. And so anything that saves us money as a human is an ecosystem service, things that nature gives us with an economic value. And you can see on the next page, 41, all of these ecosystem services. Habitat, which means that if you provide habitat for bats, then you don't have to spray as much pesticide, which saves farmers money, because bats eat huge amounts of insects that would eat a farmer's crops. So providing habitats for bats saves the farmer money, actually, and not having to pay it for pesticides. So that's just one of these examples. Make sure you can write about 2 to 3 of these examples on your AP, any kind of free response question. You don't have to memorize the whole chart, just 2 to 3 of them. On page 43, make sure you know the meaning of an external cost, and this make sure you understand the story of stuff that we will watch in class together. On page 47, make sure you know the difference between gross domestic product and genuine progress indicator. This is better for the environment. We factor in environmental costs, but also healthcare costs, and this is a better indicator of the economy than GDP. Page 47, some things in nature have no monetary value. They are not ecosystem services, but they're still important. It's important for the Siberian tiger to be alive. It's important for us to have forests so that someday we can use those resources if we need them later. Some places are important scientifically, some educationally, some because they're beautiful, we love them, some because they're culturally important. And that's it for chapter 2.